So that's really the way things developed. Weather is a big factor in this. And with the first light mud turn, which actually came kind of early on a bad die roll. So then there's an impact to your transportation assets. And it seems like I got some good rolls because the extender truck survived, didn't lose that. And then when you also go into a mud, when you go from light mud and then also mud, you have two turns to experience that. And the Germans survived that pretty well. Maybe lost a few, but nothing serious. And then when the first freeze comes, there's frost, and which impacts potentially impacts the infantry divisions. And again, there was only a few step losses with that. The deep freeze, which will not take place, I don't believe it's possible for that to take place up through the 15th of November. It's not. Light freeze in the north. Yeah, so the deep freeze is when all the yellow-coated Panzer divisions have to roll and, potentially suffer some losses there, but nothing really significant here. The one thing, from the Soviet perspective is you start to accrue a lot of supply points, and through reinforcements, you have to roll on the reinforcement table just like the Germans do, because the reinforcement table actually constitutes both this southern portion of the offensive and the one that I spoke of earlier, that's directly, the maps above this one. And so you have to roll to see if those reinforcements actually arrive in this portion or not. And the Russians start to accrue a lot of supply points, and through replacements and reinforcement, they get quite a bit. But you could see this is the dead pile, which is also interesting. There's quite a few Soviet units in the dead pile. The one thing that I'm amazed at is really right now there's only 4 German units in the dead pile. So I would say that initial offensive, kind of grit your teeth, get to Orel, get to Mitensk, slug your way through the Bryansk pocket, but don't spend a lot of supply points doing it. Just try and let it naturally clear out. And then once you're able to draw your trace supply without an extended truck extender, I should say, let that thing work back and forth, weather permitting, to bring your supply points forward, because that's a choke point. With the rail capacity on the scenario halved for, again, just this southern portion of the offensive, you only get 2 rail cap per turn for the Germans, 4 for the Russians, which is better, but 2 for the Germans. And as you can see, you could mitigate that somewhat if you use double-tracked rail. That would become 4 if you exclusively transferred by rail on that, but that's only to this southern portion. The offensive takes place through here. So trying to get supply forward is a challenge, and I would say one of the constraints, and probably why I was content with keeping the offensive to the limits of where it was. But from the Soviet perspective, I wanted to do some, we're not just going to sit idly. We're going to build up our forces and make an offensive. And they did, just recently in the last turn or so. And you can see there's quite a jumble of Soviet armor and good units. Those rocket artillery, the Katyushka units, those 75 strength, they can do some real damage. And So I had a little pocket offensive of the Soviets up towards this area, but then realized on the next turn, this is some of the struggles the Soviets have with their offensive capabilities at, November of 1941, that they had left an area mitigated, and the Germans were able to pounce on it because the ground became frozen again. And so the ground effects on movement is back to like clear. So it's like once the ground freezes, you're not into that slog of the Soviet muds, and you can start rolling again. And so I've got quite a pocket development here going on. I've got a hip shoot with that Stuka taking place, trying to encircle these units. So maybe shame on me as the Soviets being a little aggressive and not watching the entire implications of the offensive. And then same here, looks like I've got probably an air sweep from air movement going on here. But so really, for all practical purposes, this scenario is coming to an end. There'll be another turn. Weather could turn to mud again, and then really nothing happens except you just watch a bunch of supply sitting in the west that can't get forward. But very enjoyable. I would like to play this in conjunction with the other scenario that I spoke of. And then there's one more map that goes north of that even, that really just has a few units in play. So I think you could get away with doing this scenario 5-2 and 5-3 in conjunction with one another to do the northern pincer and the one that I just completed. But that's really Operation Typhoon in a nutshell. Maybe I'll do it on Vassal since I've got space limitations here. But nonetheless, I've really enjoyed this. I've always wanted to, dive into Guderian's Blitzkrieg ever since I got the first one all those years ago, which really started the whole OCS interest. And then you can see a lot of the games there that I have yet to get to. But this one is a wrap. And thanks for watching.